Hey everyone, the Germaniac here, bringing you some German news in English. Now, today's news: Russia is a storm and China is climate change, espionage from the East. Spying from China continues to grow in both volume and sophistication. Cyber snoops from the People's Republic have moved beyond companies and now seeking to exert influence on politics in Germany, all the while keeping a close eye on dissidents and minorities. So the article essentially goes on to say that China is a growing power and they are essentially spying. And, it says like, it tries to phrase it, or at least the start tries to phrase it as if they weren't doing this like 10 years ago, which they most certainly were. I mean, that's just like how global politics essentially plays. You want to always be attempting to gathering more information and influencing, potential enemies or even potential allies. So the article reads, where should we start? Perhaps with the two pandas Meng Meng and Jingqing. They couldn't be any cuter. Chinese President Xi Jinping presented them to the Berlin Zoo 6 years ago, with Xi then telling Merkel that the bears were ambassadors of the good relations between their two countries. Merkel beamed extremely likable diplomats, she said of the pair of pandas. Now, the article basically starts off kind of giving us an idea that there was potential of China being an ally. Maybe, it's like showing like, Z gave a couple of pandas, Merkel loves pandas, and even to the extent of, they wanted to turn Duisburg into a China city with, which is, well, they essentially wanted to turn to a smart city, which if you know anything about China and, well, just, well, it's an article about espionage, right? You're gonna let China build a smart city in your country? Yeah, it doesn't sound too smart to me. Now, Olaf Scholz has taken a different stance. He's essentially saying, screw the pandas. And a couple others are saying, if Russia is a storm, says Thomas Holdenwang, head of the Federal Office of Protection of the Constitution, Germany's domestic security agency, then China is climate change. Now, reporting by Der Spiegel also clearly demonstrates how Chinese spies have recruited even European politicians, hundreds of texts sent by a secret service agent from the Chinese Ministry of State Security. A man who goes by the name of Daniel Wu shows that the communist regime commissioned parliamentary initiatives in both Belgium and Germany successfully. So they managed to successfully get some initiatives through. Now, the question is, what are these initiatives? Who is Daniel Wu? And I think that's probably the most important one. What were the actual initiatives? Because obviously China favors them. So they're already influencing us to what seems to be to any degree at all. I don't know how much we actually influence them. We take all of their students, we take all of their money, and what do we get? We get a shit ton of spies, and we get influenced by a communist regime. And it says here that, it is an impressive success for China's shameless activities in Europe and the country's attempt to force its way into the heart of democracy to exert influence. Then again, every power is trying to influence every other power. That's just what you do as a power, that is. And seeing as China wants to be the power, they want to be the global leader. So I'm surprised they do this. So anyway, it says Z took power in 2012, and he basically created like an Orwellian state with all his security cameras, facial recognition, and what is it? Social. It's like their social credit system, social credit score, where if you communicate with people who have also low credit, social credit, then that actually diminishes your own social credit. And I've also heard that if you do break the law there, or you like jaywalk for example, facial recognition, which is linked to your bank account, will just deduct money from your bank. Look, you got caught jaywalking. That's a $50 fine. So it is pretty Orwellian, but I know that Australia and Darwin, for example, was testing this facial recognition technology, and that was about 2 or 3 years ago. And I mean, some of our countries are following China's playbook for control. They just do it under the guise of a democracy. So, yeah, fantastic. Here it also states by 2049, the year that will mark the 100th birthday of the People's Republic, Xi hopes to have transformed his country into a superpower, equaling or even surpassing the technological and military strength of the US. Which is no surprise. Xi's got goals, he wants to achieve them. And it goes on to say that he sees this as the Chinese dream. Now, it says controlling the diaspora. The toolbox belonging to the Chinese Secret Service agencies filled to overflowing. So they're giving a lot of money to their agents overseas. Critics of Beijing living in Germany, the agency says, have also been targeted, at times by heaping pressure on their family members back home. So this would be Chinese people who come over. The Chinese, what essentially it looks like, if you critique the Chinese government while overseas, the Chinese government isn't going to like that, and they're going to try and pressure you through pressuring your own family to be like, "Hey, look, can you just shut up about it? Like, we're going to get our asses kicked here." And it looks like they're also trying to get their hands on future tech, quantum, artificial intelligence, hypersonic, and biotechnology. Which, if you don't know, China actually operates one of the largest it's essentially like a genetic testing facility. They're essentially trying to find the element of intelligence, essentially figuring out how to increase someone's intelligence. They have about 1,200 DNA testing machines in just one. I think it's the Behavioral Institute. I can't remember the exact location, but they have over 4,000 scientists there, and each one of these machines, I mean, they cost about 2 million each. So they're playing to win. If they discover how to, you know, uh, increase intelligence on a genetic basis, I mean, what do you do after that? How do you actually keep up, or how do you beat them? You then essentially have a super race of Chinese who are smarter in every kind of way. So they would then just end up dominating. The article also lists the state of origin or state affiliate cyber attacks by origin country from 2000 to 2023. It's just China actually commits the most, following by Russia, Iran, North Korea, the US. Although I'm sure with the US, right, like I'm sure it's way more than that. The global power, I would almost bet my life that is more than that. And it's saying that Chinese cyber attacks are no longer limited to companies and are increasingly targeting politicians, says officials. Diplomats and agents in Chinese embassies and consulates are allegedly establishing broad networks of contacts in an attempt to secure the service of active and former German politicians. So they'd probably be paying them out, try and persuade them, hey, what can you tell us? Maybe do a speech here or there for any interested parties. Now, it sounds a lot like a broad attack on Germany, the Chinese Communist Party, says the German sinologist Marek Olberg of the German Marshall Fund in Berlin. It's exploiting the weakness of democratic systems in order to undermine them, which of course they would be. When you're dealing with a totalitarian regime, one which can offer a lot as well, we originally thought that, like with Obama, for example, that when we deal with these kind of states, that democracy would eventually rob off on them because it's so great. But what actually ended up happening is that because it's just one guy puts a stick in the sand, says, look, you can do whatever you want, but if you want our money, you have to change for us. And because we're capitalists, so we do. We make a couple of tweaks here and there. And because when we want to make money as well, we end up succumbing to what they want instead of the other way around. So that's just the way it is. Chinese spies and hackers are far less intrusive than their counterparts, employing less brute force, yet they are at least as effective, poisoning critics in Britain or murdering enemies that stay in a Berlin park, as Russian state-sponsored killers have done. So their strategies are completely different as well. And I would assume their strategies are different because the Chinese essentially, I think in their mindset, if they just wait, they win. So they don't need to be explosive. They can just essentially accumulate information. And over time, because they're a manufacturing power. They are rising in power. The US is getting thrown off its perch in a way. They don't have to do anything explosive. They're not a Russia. They can change the strategy, make it more subtle. So they're also silently penetrating systems as well. The article goes on. In a recent survey, 730 of more than 1,000 companies surveyed say they were targeted by cyber attacks last year. 42% have been identified at least one attack originating in China. So essentially, the conclusion is, they are a risk to Europe's long-term prosperity. Now, essentially, what the Chinese government is also doing, according to the article, is using their own, citizens that are coming over university as spies, as a sort. So, state officials in Bavaria have warned that they are particularly concerned about the grants awarded by state-run China Scholarship Council (CSC), which has sent around 5,000 undergrad and graduate students to Germany. Participants must declare their allegiance to China and the Communist Party in writing, stay in regular contact with the embassy, and follow any instructions they receive. So the biggest problem with this is that China would be implementing kind of like a carrot and stick method, right? Like they would say, hey, look, can you find this out for us? Can you go into this group? Can you promote this idea? What do you get for it? Well, when you get back home, we'll have a great position for you when you finish your studies. You're a loyal Chinese citizen or you're a loyal member. And if you don't do it, well, guess what? Now we're going to put some pressure on, kick your family's ass. And so pick one. Do you get a great job? Do you get some money? Or does your family suffer because you want to be annoying? So we see this even within our own citizens. I'm also Australian, by the way. So I remember one student in UQ, which is University of Queensland. He was a large critique of the Chinese Communist Party. And the university essentially wanted to kick him out because he was essentially so loud and proud about essentially denouncing the party. And so, why would UQ care? Because UQ was getting a lot of money from the party. So essentially, there was a lot of state-sponsored courses or subjects just teaching history, Chinese history, of course, and it would put the party in very favorable light. So, the Communist Party does pay to 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 make deals with universities. I mean, that's where the future leaders come from. So you would want to infiltrate, these kind of institutions. It just makes sense on a global strategy scale. Now it says they also put pressures on dissidents and minorities like the Uyghurs who are overseas. Don't know how many Uyghurs we have in Germany, but I don't think it's too many. It's also saying in the last 2 decades, China's stolen vast amounts of data, which is, it's pretty predictable. I don't see, honestly, like, why wouldn't they? And they also flood. So they're using propaganda. They're stealing tech. They're essentially operating kind of like a normal rival country, which is essentially what the article's trying to say. They are a rival country. They're not an ally. They don't like democracy. They're called the Chinese Communist Party. And, we essentially cannot treat them just like any other state. They do have a goal, and the goal is very clearly a kind of like a world domination. Or a lot of people think world domination, they think like, violently taking things over. It's just having more influence, economic influence, that kind of stuff. Which, if the US is kind of coming off the perch, it's already seen its highlight years, and now it's coming down the hill. Who is going to take that place? Is it going to be the Chinese Communist Party? Or should it be Europe or Germany? Or will the US be able to recover? The country's not looking too good of late. And so I guess we got to see what happens. But it also mentions, the Chinese party has, they've had some spies who have covers who have been blown. It's this example. He used a mini camera peeking out of his pants pocket to secretly film the innovative products of a fiber reinforced concrete specialist. Yeah, not very sophisticated. It's like talking about all the sophistication of the networks and spying. And then here's like some guy has a camera in his pants. Talks about different operations they've conducted and how they essentially have new levels of oppression against dissidents or anyone who speaks out against the party. Now, I guess in the end, what we can really see is that the Communist Party is gaining power. Germany must counter this. They have to. They have to figure out how are we going to prevent them from influencing us? Because we take all their students, and even the ones that stay behind and maybe work for German companies, well, at the end of the day, they are connected to a communist party. They may as well, like, they could be spies. Who knows? What do you even classify as spying, right? Is it spying if they work for Germany for a few years and then they go back and give a tell all to everybody else? And then it bolsters this totalitarian state? I don't know. What are your thoughts? Anyway, that was pretty much the video. Essentially, Germany needs to rethink their strategy when dealing with this country because it is looking more and more like a rival rather than a friend, even though they gave us two cute little pandas over 10 years ago. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. I'm doing more videos about German news in English. So there's more to come. If you have any topics you want me to cover, just tell me and I'll be happy to do it. But yeah, thanks for your time and see ya.